We are going to write a sample answer to this Writing Task 1 academic process question. A process shows the steps of how something happens or how something is made. It can be a natural process, for example, the life cycle of a silkworm that you can see on screen. Or it can be a manufacturing process, a process where humans make something. For example, this process of making silk fabric. The question we are working on is a manufacturing process. For process questions, there are 4 things we need to keep in mind. First, most process questions are straightforward, but not always. For example, in this process, if you look at the end, you'll notice that arrows from 2 different places lead to one place. This means that we can dye either the thread or the finished fabric. This is something we need to understand first and then describe correctly in our answer. This hydroelectric power plant process is even more confusing because in some parts of the process, the arrows are going in both directions. So, what happens during the day is the exact opposite of what happens during the night. So, again, we need to think before we start writing about how we are going to describe this process. There is no such confusion in the process that we are working on. It's a very straightforward process. Sometimes the process is a cycle, so there is no clear beginning or end. This is common in natural processes. In such cases, we usually mention in the overview that it is a cyclical process and may also refer to this again towards the end of the report. Second, the word count. The instructions in the question say that it has to be at least 150 words. Usually in writing task 1 questions, it's not a problem. We are able to reach at least 150 words quite easily. But in process questions, if the process is straightforward, sometimes 150 words become difficult. Quite often, you'll finish describing all the steps in only about 100 to 120 words. In a graph, chart, or table, you can give more details and increase the word count. You can compare data, describe figures, or explain trends. Here, you can't do any of that. So, as we keep writing, we'll discuss how we can naturally write longer sentences at each step, and in the end, we'll compare the word count of the longer sentences and the shorter sentences. The third thing is vocabulary and sentence variety. Don't write first this happens, then this happens, then this happens. As we write about every step, I'll point out how we have made sure that we're using a variety of vocabulary and sentence structures. The fourth thing is grammar. Manufacturing processes are usually written in the present tense and passive voice. Natural processes, on the other hand, often use active voice as well. For example, we can say the moth lays eggs. In a manufacturing process, we would normally write the fibers are filtered or the bamboo is harvested rather than someone filters the fibers or someone harvests the bamboo. Of course, if the person doing the action is known, active voice is still possible. For example, we could write the farmer harvests the bamboo. However, in most manufacturing process questions, passive voice is the better choice. Now let's start writing. The basic format is the same as every other writing task 1 answer. First, we paraphrase the question. That is, we rewrite the question using different words and sentence structures. Next, we write the overview where we briefly describe the process as a whole. Finally, we write the body paragraphs where we describe each stage of the process in the correct order. The first sentence of the report is the paraphrasing of the question. I've written 3 possible paraphrases. All of them are correct, but they use different paraphrasing techniques, which I'll explain. The question says, the diagram below shows how fabric is manufactured from bamboo. The first thing we usually try to change is the verb. Instead of shows, we can use words such as depicts, illustrates, or outlines. The word outlines is slightly different from the other three. It means give a general description of. It works well for process questions because we are describing the stages of a process. However, I'd usually avoid using it for graphs and charts. Next, we change the sentence structure. Instead of how something is manufactured, we can write the steps involved in, the process of, or the process by which. Notice that we have also changed the word manufactured to manufacturing. In the third option, we have used the word transformed, which means changed from one form into another. And we have used passive voice here, which is commonly used in process questions. Here are some useful words and phrases for paraphrasing. For example, instead of diagram, you can use illustration or figure. Instead of shows, you can use illustrates, depicts, or outlines. And there are some other useful phrases that you can reuse in many different process questions. After paraphrasing, we write the overview. The overview is a summary of the whole process. We don't describe every step here, instead, we mention the most important features. For process questions, there are usually 3 or 4 things we include in the overview. We mention the number of stages, where the process begins and where it ends. If there is anything unusual about the process, we mention that as well. For example, if it's a cyclical process, if the diagram tells us how long the process takes, or if special equipment is used, we can mention that in the overview. In this process, there's one small thing worth noting. The title says it is about making bamboo fabric. However, the final picture also shows that the finished fabric is used to make clothing. So, in the overview, we can either mention all 9 stages, or we can mention that the first 8 stages produce the fabric, and the 9th stage mentions that it is used to make clothing. Here are 3 different ways of writing the overview. All 3 are correct. You can use whichever one you prefer. Notice that we have expressed the same idea in different ways. Instead of saying there are 9 stages, we have written consists of 9 stages, the first 8 stages, after which something happens, and involves 9 stages. We have also used different ways of describing the process, such as transform and is converted into. Similarly, we have used different words for the final product, such as clothing, garments, and fabric. Here are a few more useful words and phrases that you can use while writing the overview. Notice that there are different ways of describing the structure of the process, such as involves and comprises. Similarly, there are different ways of writing about the starting and the ending point. So, our first paragraph is now ready. After that, we write the body paragraphs. The process has 9 steps, so we'll divide them into 2 body paragraphs. There is no fixed rule about where you divide a process. The idea is simply to split it into 2 logical parts so that both paragraphs are of a similar length. For each step, I'll show you a shorter and a longer way of writing. The longer version helps us reach the 150 word minimum and sometimes uses more advanced vocabulary. At the end, we'll compare the word count of the 2 versions. Step 1 mentions that bamboo plants are planted and the word spring is given in brackets. So we write initially or in the first step, bamboo plants are planted in spring. To make the sentence longer, We write during the spring season, and we add the phrase marking the beginning of the manufacturing process. Note the passive voice that we are using. Bamboo plants are planted is in the passive voice. If we write farmers plant bamboo plants, that is the active voice. Throughout this answer, we'll mainly be using the passive voice. Next, we have harvesting of the bamboo plants in autumn. To make the sentence longer, again we use during the autumn season. Then we add that the bamboo plants have matured and are harvested. Finally, we add the sentence. This completes the second step of the process. Then this is cut into strips. The shorter version simply says that in the third step, the bamboo is cut into strips. To make the sentence longer and to make it better, we start with after harvesting. So we refer back to the second step and we include extra details such as using a sharp metal blade. The fourth step mentions that the bamboo strips are crushed to make liquid pulp. Pulp is a soft, wet mixture of crushed material. For example, paper is also made from wood pulp. For the longer version, we again refer back to the previous step and say once the bamboo strips are ready, instead of just writing next. Instead of saying it produces liquid pulp or it makes liquid pulp, we've used the word yields. The fifth step is filtration. The liquid pulp is filtered to separate the long fibers from the liquid. In the longer version, we change the sentence structure by writing the fifth step is. So this is another way of changing sentence structures. We can write in the fifth step followed by a comma and then write the details of the step, or we can write the fifth step is. We also use so as to instead of to. This is a little more formal. The sixth step mentions that the fibers are softened or made soft by adding water and amine oxide. Don't worry if you don't know what amine oxide is. We just need to copy the name. In the shorter version, we have used subsequently instead of then. In the longer version, we again refer back to the previous step by writing once the filtering process has yielded the long fibers. We also change by adding to through the addition of, which is a little more formal. The seventh step is spin to make yarn. Yarn means thread. In this step, the softened fibers are used to make yarn. The third form of the verb spin is spun. So we write, the softened fibers are then spun to produce yarn. Or we can use the phrase as a result of which yarn is obtained, which means because of which. The eighth step is weave to make fabric. The third form of the verb weave is woven. So we write, the yarn is woven into fabric. In the shorter version, we have started with the phrase, this is followed by, which is another useful way of connecting two steps. In the longer version, we have used the word penultimate, which means second last. We also add that this completes the manufacturing process of bamboo fabric. The final step is a little different because the diagram doesn't explain what is happening in words. There is no label, it just shows t-shirt and a pair of socks. So we understand that clothing is made from the bamboo fabric. In the shorter version, we write that the fabric is used to produce clothing such as t-shirts and socks. In the longer version, we change the sentence structure by writing that ready to wear clothing items, such as t shirts and socks, are produced from the finished bamboo fabric. With this, we have completed our writings. This is the shorter version. As you can see, it is only 134 words. So it doesn't meet the minimum requirement of 150 words. And this is the longer version. This one is 218 words. In IELTS, there is no upper limit, so writing this many words is absolutely fine. However, you don't have to write this much if you don't want to. Ideally, our final answer should be somewhere in between. Some sentences can be short, while others should be a little longer. The important thing is that we include enough longer sentences to comfortably cross the 150 word minimum. Here are some useful words and phrases that you can use in process questions. Many of them we have already used in our sample answer. Here you can see different ways to begin a step, such as initially, subsequently, or in the penultimate step. And there are some useful linking phrases such as after harvesting, once the strips are ready, or this is followed by. And here are a few phrases that can help you write longer, more natural sentences. Using phrases like so as to, as a result of which, and through the addition of. Some of the words, such as garments and yarn, could be more specific to this process, but they can sometimes be used in other processes as well. If you found this video helpful, do check out the other Writing Task 1 videos on the channel. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful. All the very best.